Welcome to Babcock Hoops Q&A sessions. I am your host, Raquel Rodriguez. We have a great show today. Director of Research and Analysis of Babcock Hoops, Jeremy Berman, is joining me. Jeremy began as a student manager at the University of Texas, followed by stints working for the Charlotte Hornets and San Antonio Spurs. He has written a number of compelling pieces for Babcock Hoops this year. Jeremy is a very knowledgeable basketball person, and I'm looking forward to picking his brain. I hope you enjoy the show. Jeremy, I certainly want to dive in on some of the topics you've written about recently, but first, I'd like you to share a little bit about your background within basketball. Can you walk us through your career so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Born in Birmingham, Alabama, and played basketball growing up, and knew I wanted to work in the NBA and in basketball, starting in high school. So early on, I tried networking, learned about the importance of networking from my dad, and went out to conferences in Las Vegas at Summer League from the time I was 16. And I just remember, being in a room with a ton of 25, 30-year-olds that, were way older than me and much more experienced, and being so nervous just to even try to network and talk with them and really try to get my name out there, not knowing anything as a kid. But that was a good experience to really help get me started. And I decided when I went to college, I went to the University of Texas and had the opportunity to work for Coach Barnes as a student manager with the basketball team, which I did for 4 years. And I really wanted to get as much exposure as possible. So I tried to help out not only with equipment and managerial tasks, but I got involved in the video department with our video coordinators that were there at the time, and as well as helping out with analytics and trying to present numbers and data for the coaches to make better decisions as well. And when scouts were coming to practices and GMs were coming around, I was always trying to be the person to help them out, get in front of them, see whatever I could do to help them, and speak with them, pick their brains with questions on what it was like in a front office. So after my sophomore year, I was able to intern with the Charlotte Hornets, and it was really my first exposure to a front office. Was a great experience. After my junior year, I got on to intern with the San Antonio Spurs, which I then turned into a job opportunity after I finished college, and I was in San Antonio for 2 years in the front office. And then now I'm here at Babcock Hoops and enjoying what I'm doing.
While you were a manager at Texas, you worked for Coach Rick Barnes, and then when he was let go, you were stayed on when they hired Shaka Smart to replace him. How was it working for those two coaches, and did you find their styles any different, and are there any lessons from those guys that you have stuck with you?
Yeah, absolutely. They're both great coaches in their own ways. I would say they're very different. They have different styles for sure. And, that's a great thing about basketball is there's not just one way to win. There's not just one way to coach. There's not just one way to run plays to get to certain spots on the floor and motivate players. Coach Barnes, he was a great coach. He was very businesslike. So, once you were on the floor, you were expected to go hard. You were expected to give it your all. And he would ride you extremely hard, really get on guys. And I think one of his great traits was that he was able to get players to play hard for him. I mean, if you didn't play hard for him, you were not going to play. And, that was it. And I think that's still translated over at Tennessee where he is now. He's also, one of his strong suits, I think, with his staff was building up shots. So if a player couldn't really shoot or had some things wrong with their shooting form, he was really good at showing patience with the player and really taking the time to break down the shot and then build it back up to a place that it could be effective during college games. And the great thing about Coach Barnes is while he was all business on the court, he was a huge prankster off the court. So, you always had to keep an eye out for just little things where he would, be messing with people and really just trying to get under your skin, which is, a funny aspect. With Coach Smart, again, he had a very different style than Coach Barnes. He wanted to be a father figure to the players. He was all about, loving on guys as much as possible. And he still is. And he really preached to the togetherness of the team and how you had to have one goal. And he uses a word called teamship. And just a huge believer of getting guys in the right mindset, just all about the mindset and what goes on up there. And that ability and what that adds to your ability to succeed. And he's a big time grinder. I mean, he really showed me the benefits of being in the office and really going hard, recruiting, and just, putting your all into the game and into the sport.
The Charlotte Hornets owner is Michael Jordan, obviously one of the arguably greatest players of all time. What was that experience like working there, and did you have much interaction with Jordan?
Yeah, it was a great experience. It was my first look behind the scenes of what goes on in NBA front office. So I was really just trying to absorb as much as possible. I took a lot in. It was a great experience working with Rich Cho and Chad Buchanan. That was the GM and assistant GM at the time. I learned a lot of what it was like in the summer around draft time and just everything of the logistics that go on with draft workouts and getting guys in and out and what GMs and scouts look for in players and the importance of that entire draft process, which was a great experience. I also got to be involved in analytics there and creating pages and that entered into a draft book that we had presented on draft night for anybody that was involved, and just collecting, gathering all that information. With Michael Jordan, I only experienced being around him one time. It was funny. We were watching, I believe it was Willie Cauley-Stein in his draft workout, and I was standing there with a couple other young guys. And next thing I know, I look to my right, and there's MJ walking up, and he looks at us. And he's just like, "Sup, guys?" And I was like, "Okay, that's my Michael Jordan experience." So we just said "sup" back, and went about our business. And that was really my only encounter with Michael Jordan while I was there.
I'm assuming you watched The Last Dance. If you did, what were your thoughts on the series?
Yeah, well, it was a great show, just a great deep dive into Michael Jordan. I mean, my earliest memories of Michael Jordan as a kid were Wizards Jordan. So I never really got to experience him in his prime. So this was a great opportunity to really take a dive into who he was and just the competitiveness and really what made him click and really put a lot of it into perspective for me.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you think that MJ is the GOAT?
Yeah, that is definitely putting me on the spot. And I mean, like I said, I grew up, I didn't really get to see GOAT version of MJ. I really grew up with LeBron, with Kobe, with those guys in the 2000s. So I got to see LeBron firsthand, and I still get to see him, dominating the league even at his later stages of his career. Just the skill, the cerebral ability, the IQ, and the strength and athleticism that LeBron has. I mean, from my perspective, that makes him the GOAT. But watching the Last Dance really got to see, just all that MJ really inspired in everybody. I mean, whether it was teammates, whether it was the opposition fans, coaches, just the competitiveness and really what made him click. And that really put into perspective, the greatness that MJ had. But just from my perspective and what I've grown up with and what I've seen firsthand, LeBron is the GOAT for me.
In addition to working for the Charlotte Hornets, you also had the opportunity to work for the San Antonio Spurs. Can you tell us a little bit about your role there and what were some of your responsibilities?
In San Antonio, it was an incredible experience. I really got to have a wide-ranging experience with just lots of different tasks and involved in different facets of an NBA franchise and how it runs. Really, my main tasks were involved with the strategy and the salary cap. I was part of the strategy team while I was there. I really had to stay up to date on CBA rules, be informed about that, and would kind of be a part of the group that writes up. We kind of had an internal newsletter of sorts that we'd really try to educate and inform the group, the whole entire front office, on what pertinent information related to strategy, the salary cap, what's going on around the NBA. I also helped analyze market scenarios and just brainstormed opportunities to gain a competitive advantage, whether it be by trade, free agency, analyze what players were going to be worth, the value of picks, players, and opportunities where competitive forces and the life cycle of all 30 teams would give us the opportunity to make a move and try to improve our roster. Also just projected and try to predict what every team was going to do so we could try to stay ahead of the game and really earn that competitive advantage. And I also, that was really part of my main tasks. And then I also got to do some scouting as well, which was a great experience. Was involved in a lot of different logistical organizational projects, helped out with player development and just kind of trying to make it a holistic experience for players, and just trying to help the organization, do anything I could to help the organization be the best and win championships and have success.
Led by Greg Popovich and R.C. Buford, many have said that the Spurs organization has been the best run team in all of professional sports. What do you think that they do differently that makes them so special?
Yeah, well, from Pop and RC on down to everybody else in the organization, I mean, they truly treat you like family, no matter where you are on the totem pole. Once you put on the silver and black, whether it be a jersey or a polo, you're a part of the Spurs family, and you really feel that way, just even from the very beginning. And I think that attracts the right people who, want to be a part of that culture, who will add to that culture, drive that culture, just with people that have humility, are smart, and will work extremely hard. And that kind of goes along with their core values. So they preach that every day. They look for that. They hire that, and they try to sign that in players and draft that in players. So I still have a great relationship with everybody there. I talk to them, pretty regularly. And it's just an experience that, it's really second to none, just from the learning opportunities they provide and, the opportunity to contribute once you've really, settled in there.
Let's move on to some of your work with Babcock Hoops. I recently read your article, NBA Schedule Effects on Scouting Departments. And in this article, you outline the potential effects that scouting departments will likely face due to the NBA's new schedule as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Can you walk us through the basic idea of that article and your personal opinions on how NBA front offices should adjust?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I wrote in the article, some might think that a director of scouting position, all that they do is they get to travel and they watch ball and, create their rankings and figure out who the best player to draft is. But there's so much more to the job than just that. There's a lot of logistical things like scheduling, organizing where your scouts are going to be, helping a busy GM figure out which prospects he needs to go see firsthand because they could really be in your draft range, making intel calls, and really just helping, the organization run smoothly. So something to highlight just with the coronavirus pandemic was, with an era of one and dones, players that are only going to be in college, you might only have, for 1 year, might only have 30 games to evaluate. So it's important to get as many data points as possible. And with NBA scouts not able to watch regular high school games or regular AAU games, the spring showcases are very important for these players that are high level, going to be playing great competition in, games such as the McDonald's game, the Jordan Brand Classic, the Nike Hoop Summit. Those are extremely important data points to get intel information on, just be around the players, and, obviously watch the games. So without that this year, with that being canceled and games even further being canceled, it's really important that preseason tournaments in college and early season practices in October and November are attended heavily, and they probably will be attended heavily by scouts this year, even more so than they have been in the past. However, with the NBA season being postponed and the recent releasing of the NBA draft occurring on October 15th, that is right around the time where, scouts are usually going to practices, trying to make campus visits and really get a deep dive on the early prospects of these players, especially one and dones. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams will organize their staff with, prep for 2020 draft that's occurring right in the thick of that time. And then during preseason tournaments in college, the training camp will be going on in November, or how they're going to prepare early on for the 2021 season with scouts. If they do teams split that up? Do they focus on 2020 until that draft is passed and immediately get back on the road for 2021 scouting? It'll be interesting to see what strategies are used and which is the best strategy.
You also wrote an article related to the NBA draft and the coronavirus titled "Coronavirus NBA Agents' Newfound Power in the 2020 NBA Draft." I found it interesting how you discuss the importance of teams having prospects' medical information prior to the draft. Why do you think that this is so important?
Yeah. Medical information is something that teams value heavily because, I mean, if you really narrow it down, it seems a little bit obvious, but, if you don't have a healthy body and the ability to, keep up your athleticism that gets you to where you are in the NBA, I mean, it's much harder to be a competent NBA player. There's really kind of a baseline health and baseline athleticism that's generally necessary to succeed in the NBA. So, it's almost, that might be oversimplifying a little bit, but looking at it a different way, it might even be that simple. There's so much information available to doctors and sports scientists these days, to where they're able to analyze information once they get it and be able to tell if a player's running gait can be improved and if that will help their athleticism improve significantly. If, almost to where if they're going to pull a hamstring or they're likely to pull a hamstring 5 years from now. So that information is extremely important to help make the best decision, and a decision, especially in the draft, that could affect your team for millions of dollars and affect the bottom line of an owner, and the success on the court as well. Just as an example, Greg Oden is an easy one to point to, where he was obviously so talented and was the number one pick even with medical concerns, but he wasn't able to achieve the greatness that he may have achieved had he not had bad knees that were really causing an issue for him. So, the examples like that are why it's so important to really just get as much information holistically as possible on players. And I think medical information is an extremely important aspect of that.
I have one last question for you, Jeremy. Based on the articles I've read and talking with you here, it seems like you'd be the prime candidate to one day be an NBA general manager. In a perfect world, is that where you'd like to see your career path take you?
I love every part of basketball, just from growing up playing, studying X's and O's, scouting players, the salary cap strategy. I mean, every single part of that subject matter is just, is my first love. It is what I grew up on, and it's what I've always wanted to do. I'm happy with to be continually involved in basketball in any way, really. And, I'm happy with where I am right now and at Babcock Hoops. And yeah, I enjoy basketball so much, and yeah, I'm really happy to be involved in any way.
Thank you, Jeremy. It was great talking with you, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thanks, Raquel. I appreciate it.